May we start?
Welcome back to another Tasty Tuesdays talk. I am Zebra, and today I welcome founder of KiConscious, Michael Nicklin.
Hi, Z.
How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. It is such a pleasure to be here.
I'm glad you're here. I was trying not to say the consciousness.
That's good. It's a popular thing to say, though.
Yeah. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. It's there's a lot going on out there, as you know, in the world, and a lot of people are sort of struggling with that energy bombardment that's going on. Whether or not you watch media, just walking down the street, being in the energy of friends, it's a lot to navigate. So we're all trying our best.
So that energy you're talking about, it's related to KiConscious. You want to just run down the energy part since you brought it up?
Sure. Well, the name KiConscious is basically being present and aware of life force energy. Life force energy is ki or chi. I went with the K for ki because that's the Japanese pronunciation of it. And I have a background in Reiki, which is rooted in Japan. So I sort of went with the Japanese version. But whether you refer to it as ki or chi, it is life force energy. And then the conscious part is remaining conscious of that, because quite often we lose sight of all that's available around us as well as within us. We often focus on what's within us, but the energy that is around us has a tremendous impact on us as well. And particularly now with everything that's going on.
So give me a few examples.
The midterm political race is one of the many things that is really set up to divide as opposed to unite. So we have opposing forces, i.e. if you think of the Yin and Yang symbol, basically that line down the middle of the symbol is where those two meet, where harmony is achieved. And everything surrounding our political system or our democracy is really set up to divide and sort of push energies away from that center line over into the what I'll call the light and the dark side. And I'm not referring to either party as light and dark side, but the polarities, the opposite sides. So the first thing that came to mind, because we just sort of are in the aftermath of it, not completely over.
I was thinking right now, the analogy would be sporting teams.
Yes, exactly.
You know, you usually, if you're a diehard LA Ram fan, and then they're playing the San Francisco 49ers, usually one side is not going to go and root for the other side.
Right.
So it's kind of this in that yin and yang, but there's never that balance between sports because everyone wants to go at each other's throats.
Absolutely. Sports is another great analogy. And I think that when we choose a side of anything, and in your example, we're choosing the side of one sports team, I think the difference is leaving the game at the stadium when you leave. But so often, because of all of our access to technology and to communication-related technology, the vitriol continues way beyond the booing at the game. Exactly. You know, it isn't just applause when the team that we support scores a play. It's the booing and the hissing and the ultimate hate. Yeah, that vitriol.
That's the drunk fan behind you.
I only wish it was drunk fans.
Yeah,
it's pretty much a lot of fans now.
Yeah.
So that's another great example. And if you think of all the energy that's going on in that stadium, that's what I'm talking about in terms of the energy around us. It's hard to just shut it out. We become part of that energy. So we become the booers. We become the applauders. And same with the midterms. It got so bad with politics that I just couldn't even bring myself to watch the news on television or to listen to it each day because it became so divisive.
I think a huge extent to that is that people are just so emotionally invested into their side. They have lost rationality. They've just gone off the deep end in a way where you can't have a civil conversation sometimes, I think. And politics is just, got worse and worse with people, and people just, it's like a sporting team. They get more emotionally invested into their team.
Yeah.
And
drama sells.
Yeah.
And
well, it's very
it's stirring the pot for more drama is what gets eyes and ears.
Yeah.
And the toll that it takes on us, I think we forget. There are many aspects of politics that, we are their pawns on their chessboard, really. And the slogan should be, may the better manipulator win, because the more that we are manipulated into opposing sides of that yin yang symbol instead of the middle, the more we're going to be frustrated at the other 50%.
Yeah.
So if you think of the yin yang symbol being circular and half, it's not tipping to one side or the other. It's two halves of that whole, or two fan bases at the game of equal. If it's a home game, it may be a little more skewed to the home team, but being surrounded by all that energy is not just being surrounded by the half that you might agree with or that holds the same beliefs. It's all the energy. And that can feel like being in an emotional tug of war.
So how would one be able to accept that other half? For someone that is using a lot of energy to reject.
Oh, that's I love that. The energy of rejection. That's brilliant.
I know.
Because
I just thought of that actually.
That's really a brilliant thinker. I like that. I think that the greatest challenge is that much of what many of us are being fed is, let me go to the expression that was really popular a few years ago and still is, the big lie. We all know what that means. I don't want to talk about it or mention names, but if someone has been lied to and they have embraced it as truth, so it becomes their truth, but it is not truth, uppercase truth, it is manufactured truth to manipulate, then our relationship with truth and true understanding is distorted. So I think education on a daily basis, reading both sides, reading data, and not reading data that is manufactured by a publicist, but data that is scientifically sound, that is accurate, is one of our only defenses against what is happening to us. Now, there are some ways to mitigate the impact of it, and that is a big part of what I do with KiConscious and in the modality, ways to help people recenter. More and more people are attempting to meditate. They're attempting to use pharmaceuticals to try to find a center ground or a more inner calm.
Or even recreational.
Sure. Yeah. Well, yes. Another phrase that just came to mind, recreational truth. That's really interesting. I'll have to pursue that. I'll have to write about that.
Well, some of it, some of that stuff is becoming legalized. So
sure. Yeah. I think.
Or turning into pharmaceutical in a way.
I'm a big proponent of recreation in all its forms. I just am concerned about things that dull us cognitively as opposed to sharpening us cognitively, because when we are not fully present in the reality that surrounds us, we miss a lot of information. Now, there are there are cases to be made where imbibing in the recreational can help us connect more to our higher selves. I believe that is more illusion than reality. I believe because as a child, I began to hyper-connect with myself, and there was no alcohol or legal pharmaceuticals or anything else involved. It's a mental process that we can strive to achieve, to be able to tap into that without needing to have the more profound ayahuasca experience, for example, or any of the others that are induced or catalyzed by anything outside us as opposed to within us.
What are your thoughts on plant medicines, and have you experienced plant medicines?
Yes. I don't really have any thoughts on plant medicines. I have a lot of thoughts about what they do, what they've proven to do to the mind, and where someone is present under the influence, if you will, of those catalysts versus where someone can reach without them.
Naturally.
Right. So for people, internally, organically, because I do consider a lot of those things natural, in their composition. Thank you, forests. I just feel that in many cases, the sensory experience of those, in some cases, takes us somewhere else. And whenever we go somewhere else, fortunately or unfortunately, we have to come back, or we have to attempt to stay in that somewhere else. And then, of course, that becomes the definition of overusing or abusing, because we like where we are and we don't necessarily want to come back here. We're experiencing that just with the experiences of the metaverse and going into another world that is completely manufactured and is more pleasant to be in than here. The gaming world that people might feel is more pleasant than this one. So we're finding culturally more and more people wanting to escape from here. And yet we always have to come back because this is our base reality.
It's interesting you mentioned the metaverse. I had some guests that we did a couple times and talked about the metaverse.
I really enjoyed that show.
First one or second one? You may probably don't know.
I don't know which one.
Yeah. But there was one, and the gentleman he had this moment where he was saying how deeply he's connected with the metaverse. He's never been so deeply connected to all the people in the metaverse. And he was explaining how he was alone in reality. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't like he was unhappy. He just said he was alone. He was just pursuing his dreams, music and all that. But when he found the metaverse, which he's developed this family, this huge community over the last couple of years, he kept on saying it. It's like, I'm deeply connected to everyone in the metaverse. And,
I have to say that sends chills down my spine.
From what you just said before, or?
Yes. I mean, having studied cultural anthropology and psychology and group psychology, organizational psychology, and the impact of the external on the internal, just on a more superficial level a few years ago when we talked about, or when we read about the psychological meltdowns that were happening from people's social media personas, because that isn't who they are. That's all manufactured, and they are uncomfortable with who they are in quote unquote real life. Unfortunately, when we wake up in the morning and we go to sleep, we are not in the metaverse. We are in a bed, in an apartment we have to pay rent on, or a house that we pay rent on, or a mortgage, or all the responsibilities of the real world still exist. Yeah. So the more we check out of them, the harsher they feel when we come back. And that is what I spend quite a bit of time with clients on, is how to manage the world in which they reside. They don't need any help managing the world that they escape to. They know where to go to buy it. They know how to use it. They know how they feel when they're there, i.e. the metaverse. When a device is unplugged, the metaverse ceases to be accessible. Then what do?
You sleep with it on.
The old. Okay.
Then you wake up and you're still in the metaverse.
Yes. Until you have to come back from the metaverse to pay your actual rent, because you're also paying double rent. Yeah. You're paying your rent and your mortgage in the metaverse. You're spending money on virtual clothing, on virtual experiences, virtual performances.
But the people behind it are looking to find ways to monetize it.
Absolutely.
So if it's a job, then they're trying to make money. It's a business.
Yes. So is politics. Yeah. So they're working hard to make money from us. So is the metaverse.
Yeah.
So are the growers.
Yeah.
It's the huge intersection between art and business, basically.